Alright. Alright, guys. Welcome to another stay at the Hotel Ford. Oh, it's pretty out there. On this episode, we got a lot of work to do to the old wife's rig this weekend. And it's going to be two different videos. This is the first one. First thing is a bunch of front end work. We got upper and lower control arms for the old rig, so that'll be quick and easy. Probably not. We got some new brake pads to go on the front end while we're under there. That stuff's the next video. Don't worry about that stuff. And while we're doing the front brake pads, we're going to take the back wheels off or leave them on if I can. We'll see. And we're going to do a whole 4-wheel brake fluid flush on account of our fluid's really old and got the moisture content level pretty high in it. But over here we got a bunch of parts and pieces that we're going to be getting to work with this weekend. Yeah, that stuff down here, that's also the next video. Don't worry about that stuff right now. That's for me to worry about tomorrow. And over here, you can tell I'm getting ready to get to business. I brought like half my toolbox from work home with me. We're going to be running the air tools at home for the first time. Hopefully my old air compressor, I've never gotten around to fixing it. I mean, it works all right, but not the best. Hopefully we can turn these guys. We'll see. That's a few minutes from now problem. Don't worry about that. All right. Step 1. Jack up your car. You know, it just occurred to me. I just went ahead and confidently picked the car up and put it on the jack stands before breaking the lug nuts loose. I hope we got enough air pressure in the old worn out compressor. Let's find out. Oh, cool. Yeah, she's way down on power than when I'm at work. Oh, but she makes enough. It's not just good, it's good enough. Power tools at home. Alright. Now that we got the wheels off, the next thing we're going to do, I thought about leaving the rotor and the brake caliper and the bracket and all on the steering knuckle, but I'm going to be taking the steering knuckle loose and setting them to the side, and it'd just be silly to leave this thing as heavy as that would be. So the next thing I'm going to do is remove the bolts from the bracket that holds the caliper on, and we'll use this jack stand here to set him up to the side. Don't hang him off the brake hose. I know you're thinking about it. Don't do that. It's the wife's rig. Jeez. Yep, so we'll get that done on both sides, and then we'll do some other stuff. Alright, now that we got our breakalizers out of the way, we're going to hop in here, remove the cotter pin from this steering joint right there. And back in here, remove the cotter pin from the lower ball joint. And before we get the steering knuckle looselized from the upper and lower, we're going to get this shock removed. Just got to take that nut off the top. Luckily those are fairly new, that shouldn't be too bad. And then he's got 2 bolts down. Then he's got 2 bolts down from the underside. We'll get him out of the way, take the steering joint out, and remove this nut and drive that bolt back through. This is the, what do you call, the sway bar-alizer. Sway bar end links. Yep. And then when we get all that stuff loose, we'll take more stuff loose. Hehehe. Tattoos. Alright. And now, moving on, got the shock out and taking the, the tie rod ends loose. One of these front end service kits are really super handy to have. This tool here I've got around on the other side. Just about every tool in this kit I could highly recommend, except that one. I don't like that one. But all the other ones, Oh, they're awesome. Like this guy here. Instead of me putting the nut up here and trying to hit it with a hammer just carefully enough to drive it out but not tear up any of the threads on our tie rod ends, this is a much better way to do that. Hi, buddy. See? Check this out. All right. Now that we got our steering knuckle all free from everything except the upper and lower, I've removed the nut off of the lower here, and I've got this jack under the lower control arm. It's not supporting it, but it's under it. And I'm pretty sure the lower is much harder to remove from these guys than the upper. I think the upper slides out pretty easy. So we should be able to now, with our jack in place, to catch this guy, because I'm afraid he might and the spring shouldn't be able to fly out because he goes so far up into this spring hold, but still, you know what I mean? Yeah. But yep, now I should be able to hit the side of the steering knuckle with a hammer, and the spring tension that's still on that lower control arm should drive him out while I'm striking that. And again, I got the jack down there just in case. I don't think the lower control arm will, you know what I mean, but just in case it does go, we're ready to catch it. Yep. What do you think, buddy? Hit it with a hammer, that's what he said. Yep. There it went. Definitely don't go striking on the top like I did there if you're not replacing your control arm and ball joint. But yeah, that's it. Oh, and one other thing. You see how my dust plate is bent out of the way? I did that before driving this out, because if you don't, the lip of this guy will catch in that dust plate and really mess it up. So now after I reassemble everything, I can just bend it back down. Alright. Now we'll take the nut loose and the bolt out of the top up here and slide the steering knuckle off. Yep. Yeah. Alright. Here we are on the other side, after I just practiced on the first side. Now, we get to come up to the fun part, the sketchy part. It's really not that sketchy, but it will never not feel sketchy. So anyhow, now we get to lower our jack down, and when I lower it all the way down, because the car is not quite high enough, she'll be bottomed out. And then we do the thing with the pry bar in the thing. As far as she'll go, we got to get this pry bar in here. There are other ways you could go about this. You could go, hi puppies. You could go like unbolting the A-arm and then putting another jack on the other side and trying to ease it down that way. There's really not a whole lot of tension on this spring, but definitely a fair amount. Ooh, get that out the way. Excuse me, sway bar. But yeah, now we just do this. Excuse me, guys, move. Not scary at all. Yep. See, it's really like not much tension, but sometimes when you do that, she'll go doing and really freak you out. And another thing to keep in mind is the big spring bucket she lives in. It really stops it from being able to like shoot out across the shop. So that's good. All right. Now she's all, yep. Moving on. Alright. Now, moving on. Our next step down here is going to be to actually remove the arms. And normally, in a lot of other applications right now, you would need to take your paint marker, clean all this up, and make a mark over here and on each side. But that's if you had alignment. That's if you had the alignment adjustments down here. We appear to be just straight through bolted through all four corners of our control arms, so it looks like we don't have to mark anything here. See, on a lot of cars you'll have like a funny looking cammed washer guy on both sides, and that adjusts where this guy sits in the spot over here. It'll move it all around, so it'd be important to get those close to where they used to be and then bring her to an alignment shop. But it looks like on this guy, these Vicks and whatnot, all of the alignmentation is handled up here. So all the ins and outs and lefts and rights and tilt-a-whirls is all done right there. Alright, well that's cool. So then we'll just go ahead and removify on these 4 bolts here. And over there. Right, buddy? Alright. Show you guys more clearly what I was talking about. Here's the bolt out of our control arm. See how it's just a bolt? That's a doohickey to hold the nut still for you in this tight area back there. And the holes are just holes. Now this is what a lot of other, probably more modern cars have. This is like a cammed style bolt guy. See how he's all flat on one side? It's important you remove the nut on these and don't try to drive the bolt out, because that won't go well. But these guys on a more modern car, you loosen this nut and then you turn this other bolt to adjust the cam of the thing, and it would like change the point that he sits in relation to the frame to adjust on your cambernations and whatnot. But yeah, just since I had one of these, I figured I'd show you the difference. We're old school. It's just a bolt. Alright. Now we're ready to pull this guy down and check out my bushings. This is why we're in here. Yeah, I'm sure these didn't have any wobble play. If you didn't know, your bushing being all shot out like this sucks, because it allows your control arm to wiggle back, forth, up and down, and it affects your steering characteristics. When you go to turn the wheel, it'll just pull your control arm slack all to one side before the wheels start to turn. It'll give you a little dead spot. And also, there's no way to control this movement, so while you're going down the highway hitting bumps and stuff, it'll just and you know what I mean? Your suspension geometry will just be shifting around on you as you drive, which will cause the tires to be pulling one way or the other, and it's not fun. It's not a good time. So yeah, that's why. That's a pretty cooked bushing there, fellers. See, this must be the one I looked at a few years ago. I didn't think they were that bad. They are indeed that bad. You see how the center like pin guy that the bolt goes through is all the way to one side? Yeah, it's supposed to be in the middle. You know, it's astounding how stout it still feels by hand. But I guarantee you it doesn't feel that way with the weight of the car and the motions of the driving on the roads. Alright, get rid of that. Alright. That one wasn't too bad to get to. Now, I just want to know, whose idea was it to put the thing that stops it from turning on the accessible side and the nut over there? There's a lot of room over here. Because I don't see how it would make a difference, I'm going to reassemble this with the nuts on the inside. Because a feller's going to get in here and do this again in 5 or 10 years or something, I'm sure, probably. You know what I mean? But really, what is the... never mind. I bet this bolt doesn't have room back here to go in that way. That's why they're that way. Oh well. Okay. So, this is what we're coming up with. See, this is our guy, and I took my prying tool and popped this dude off of it. The only thing is, to attach him, they squished down a bunch of the corners on the bolt. Yep, so hopefully I can put my 18 millimeter down here, hold the nut on that side, and she'll spin right out and not just round right off. Right? Right? Probably. Alright, well that's a good start. Now we just need to do that again. You should definitely have a 13/16 wrench on standby for this job, fellers. I do, I have one. It's at the shop. I didn't want to go get it right now, so I used a 13/16 socket and my pliers. And there you go. Yay! Alright. Working on getting the lower to fit back in after we cleaned up on the frame a little bit and got all the grease out of our buckets up there. Start back clean, you'll never get in there again. Anyway, this is probably a normal issue, but my bushing over here has gotten so beat and the bolt is twisted in that hole so much that she's misshapen on our receiving antlers for the control arm. Luckily, we have the repair kit for that. Well, after some reformage, we got her back to where she used to be. That was a lot of bending, but after I got it, the control arm just slipped right into place. The upper was a lot less eventful, so we haven't deformed the buckets up top. That was nice, it just went right in. And over here, I did manage to get the bolt to go in from the back side, so it'll be a lot easier to tighten back up now. You just can't do it with the little holder doodad in place. But the bolt that I broke the holder off of, she fit right back in there nice. There you go. Alright. It's about spring-a-ding time. I had thought about putting the spring like in the control arm, not bolting the control arm yet, and then jacking the spring up and bolting the control arm in, which could be a good method on a lot of cars, but I fought so long to get the guy bolted into place, I just, bolted him in. And I'm a little scared anyway of the control arm not being fixed one way or the other and me putting tension on that spring and it going choo, kicking the control arm out. Whatever. There's more than 17 ways to skin a cat, if you know what I mean. Anyhow, back in with the spring. Okay. And as we go to reinstall our spring, what you're going to do is make sure your little rubber guy is in place up in the top there. Bring your spring in and get it about like how mine is, and then go get yourself a spring compressor. Come on this side, come on that side. You don't have to go down a whole lot, but make it a little bit shorter, enough for you to get the bottom of it down here inside that dish. After you get down that far, you can take your lower control arm and start bringing it up until it's a little more level. Then you can use a big pry bar and pop this guy over that lip over there that holds him into the control arm. But what I'm about to do is get this guy like how I've got it, make sure that I have him seated at the top, and I'm going to use pry bars to slide him into that bucket over there, and then use pry bars again to get him onto the thing. I thought about recording that, but I'd rather not show y'all how to do that. Go get the spring compressors, and it's a much easier, a lot less stressful and annoying. Just do that. Go get the spring compressors. Alright, and another thing, when you're going back in with your spring, you may think that it doesn't make a difference looking at the top which way you go, but it does. You see the where the coil ends down there? He sits, you may be able to tell in the light here, see the way this curves down? This is the lowest point right here, where the drain holes are. He sits down there. Otherwise your ride height's gonna be weird. You won't be in, you know what I mean? You won't be locked in like you need to be. Alright, now that we got our spring back into place, we can go ahead and grab our steering knuckle. Set him back down there and jack the jack up to make the dicky into there. When you get that guy slid in, the upper ball joint has that recess in the shaft of it there. So when you get this guy in far enough, you'll be able to slide the bolt back into place. And then, now that we have the lower control arm all up where it goes, same with the upper, they're like in their range of motion. Now we can go ahead and torque down this nut and that nut, and both of the bolts on the LCA, both of the bolts on the whatever, the upper control arm, the UCA. And the best place I found to get torque specs for this car was the book here. Google is not a lot of help on torque specs for this feller. Google's a lot of help on 2000 and older Crown Victorias, but 97, no, not help. So yeah, if you need them, there you go. Slow it down and read the one you need. Alright, now that we got all our fittings tightened down, we can finally remove on the jack. Yep. And that's that corner put back together. Now we're ready to bend our flat back down and hook up our other appendages. Oops. I just noticed right here, your sway bar, before you get your control arm up into place and put the steering knuckle on, you need to swing him back up. See how now he won't go? That means I'm gonna have to take these guys loose, the sway bar mounts, and then, you know, flip them up in right up here on top of this guy. Also, I need to grab my bump stop guy off of the old control arm. There's a little mounty dude there. He's over there. But yeah, we need to swap him over, and when you're doing this, make sure you swing these up, maybe tie them up here so you don't have to remember on it. And then you won't have to take that loose like I'm about to do. Oops. Woohoo! Moving on to the other side. I can definitely give you fellers a warning. The worst part of this whole job is getting to the bolts for the upper control arm. Oh, it's a great time. The driver's side's not near as bad. The passenger side really sucks. Especially these. The rearmost upper control arm bolts. They're just not a walk in the park. Unless maybe you got mugged, then they are a walk in the park. But yeah, probably the worst part. Giving the old brake rotors a little backwoods lathing. See, this is the before. Yep, that's before. See, we got a little groovage going on. That groovage will often make the squealage. And this is after running around it with some 60 grit on my my palm sander. Yeah, not exactly as straight as a brake lathe, but yeah, it's pretty close. Alright, now that I got my brake rotors all lathed down and ready to go back on, we got some new brake pads. So I went ahead and popped out the old brake pads. We'll go ahead and mount this guy back up to put the caliper back into place, lock tight and torque down the caliper bracket bolts. And we'll do that to make it easier to unbolt the caliper from the bracket, because we're putting new pads on. We want to compress that caliper piston back down, and we want to go ahead and grease our slides too while we're in here. So let's do that. Alright, now I got my brake caliper bracket mounted back in, torqued 100 and whatever foot-pounds that was. Now we got our brake grease out, and we're gonna pull these guys. That little boot pops off that edge there, and we'll get him out of the way, and then we'll wipe all the old grease off, and we'll put new grease in. Yeah, and we'll throw a little grease right here where the pads ride. And oh yeah, I got my caliper all compressed back in, ready for the new pads. Forgot my cool caliper compressor at the shop, but I had a vice grip that would suit the situation. Yeah. Alright, well that about wraps up our whole front end rebuild with the brake pads. Now we're gonna, I got my PB Blaster out, soaked down all 4 of the bleeder screws. I got the back wheels off. So we're gonna run around all 4 corners, keep our brake master cylinder all full, and I'm gonna use a sucker device to pull brake fluid from the back furthest away corner from the guy first, and then that one, and then this one, and then this one, and I'm gonna suck through a whole bunch of fluid and keep this guy topped off, go through a few reservoirs full of fluid until we get nice fresh clean fluid out of every corner, and then we will have performed a brake flush. All right, and after I got clean fluid on all 4 corners, I'll get the old lady out here to step on the brake for me a few times on each corner and do a good foot pedal bleed to finish it all off, and then we'll be back riding. But that about wraps up the rebuild video. Thanks for watching. Comment, like, subscribe, keep your fingers greasy, and have a good one. Thanks for staying with us at the Hotel Fort.